Scrutiny is growing of Neville Roy Singham's U.S. network of pro-CCP organizations. Is Mexico turning against China? And the Philippines and China might be headed towards more violence. That and more on this week's China News Headlines. Welcome to China Uncensored. I'm Chris Chappell. This episode is sponsored by Surfshark. Whenever you go online, you really should be using a VPN like Surfshark to cover your tracks and protect your identity. I'll tell you more in a bit. There's some good news regarding Neville Roy Singham, a pro-CCP billionaire with a network of extreme left organizations in the U.S. Republican Representatives James Comer of Kentucky and Anna Paulina Luna of Florida are ramping up a probe into CCP-linked funding, fueling civil unrest in the U.S. Now, I know you might be thinking, which civil unrest? There's kind of a lot of that going around. And the answer is yes. Comer is the chairman of the House Committee on Oversight and Government Reform, while Luna is the chairwoman of the Task Force on the Declassification of Federal Secrets. Both are seeking to expand their investigation into Singham's financial and political activities, and, in a letter, they've asked for help from the Treasury Department and other relevant government bodies, which hopefully means that things are about to get real for Singham. The U.S. has reportedly reached a TikTok deal framework with China, although U.S. President Trump and Chinese leader Xi Jinping are set to finalize it today, so we'll see. This is according to U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, and comes during trade talks between the U.S. and China in Madrid. It also comes after Trump delayed the enforcement of the so-called TikTok ban for a fourth time. The ban has been delayed almost as many times as Silk Song was, and almost as difficult. According to the Wall Street Journal, the deal would see about 80% of TikTok's U.S. business owned by a consortium of various investors, including Oracle, Silver Lake, and Andreessen Horowitz. So what made it possible for a deal to finally be put together? Well, Scott Bessent will tell you.
President Trump made it clear that he would have been willing to let TikTok go dark.
Good to know for the guy who kept it alive for months. I just hope the CCP didn't invent any new issues to put onto the table in order to force more concessions from the U.S. for TikTok. Oh wait, they did. China's launched an anti-dumping probe into U.S. analog chips used in PCs and routers. What random timing! The Chinese Communist Party is accusing the U.S. of undercutting local vendors on price while flooding the market. Well, if anyone would be an expert on undercutting local vendors by flooding the market, you see where I'm going with this. Hypocrites of the highest order and all that. China also announced an anti-discrimination investigation into alleged U.S. trade practices that limit Chinese chip makers' ability to compete abroad. Because weren't you aware? Only the CCP is allowed to do that. Mexico is set to raise tariffs on cars from China to 50% in a major overhaul. Mexico says this is about protecting domestic producers and jobs. They see Chinese vehicles as the most dangerous cars outside of the cartels. This is a big deal because the country is a major importer of Chinese cars. But the Chinese Foreign Ministry condemned these measures, saying that it firmly rejects moves that are taken under coercion to constrain China or undermine China's legitimate rights and interests under any pretext. You know, that inalienable human right to use slave labor conditions to produce loads of crappy products to flood the world and destroy other countries' manufacturing bases. Pretty sure that was God. In the end, the final decision hasn't been made since the Mexican Congress must approve it first. But it's definitely a bad sign for the CCP. China is urging Mexico to rethink this policy before it enacts countermeasures, while also saying it values the relationship with Mexico. Because without Mexico, they'll need to find other ways to flood the U.S. with fentanyl, like Canada. Speaking of bad signs for China, its youth jobless rate climbed to 18.9% in August. That's the highest it's been since 2023, when the National Bureau of Statistics changed how it counts youth unemployment to make the situation look better than it really was by excluding college students. Basically, the problem has gotten so big, the people paid to ignore it can't even ignore it. And after the break, the Philippines and China appear to be headed for more deadly clashes. Welcome back. The Philippines is protesting China's plan for a nature reserve at a hotly disputed shoal. That would be the Scarborough Shoal, over which the Philippines and China have clashed numerous times. Which actually belongs to me, since I put my flag on it. What a wild summer that was. Even though it's illegal under international law, China claims this territory as part of its 9-dash line of the South China Sea, despite the fact that the shoal is in Filipino waters, which would be like me, as a New Yorker, claiming a swimming pool in beautiful Delaware, which has the nicest pools, by the way. Last Wednesday, China's State Council announced the approval of plans to make a nature reserve there to protect coral reefs, which, given China's track record when it comes to protecting coral reefs, is really about cementing their claim over the shoal. And, like the second half of the movie Hitch, it gets worse from here. Because China has fired a water cannon at Philippine ships in the South China Sea. Yet again! They're like a Blastoise that only learned one move, and sometimes hurts itself in the confusion. According to the Philippines, the water barrage lasted for over half an hour. One person was injured and a ship was significantly damaged. China used water cannon, it's super effective. But China's Coast Guard, of course, blamed the Philippines for the encounter, and even accused the Philippines of an intentional ship collision that started the whole thing. Sure, Jan. Then, because the situation apparently wasn't tense enough, a Chinese naval warship broadcasted a radio message announcing live fire exercises, which reportedly caused panic among Filipino fishermen, because water cannons are bad enough, but live fire implies they may also have a Charizard. Meanwhile, as all that was unfolding in the Philippines, Taiwan's Coast Guard intercepted and kicked out 4 Chinese Coast Guard vessels near Jinmen Island, all with their locators off trying to sneak in. Clearly, this is a problem that goes well beyond the South China Sea. And speaking of Taiwan, China has warned the UK and the US after the USS Higgins and the HMS Richmond sailed through the Taiwan Strait. Chinese air and naval forces were told to monitor the 2 ships, which the PLA's Eastern Theater Command accused of troublemaking and provocation, which is what they say about any country sailing through these international waters that they don't own, but think they do. This would be like if I yelled at someone swimming in Delaware to get out of my pool. Find some new shtick, China, because this is getting boring. Every other story I cover feels like I'm just hitting copy and paste. Both Britain and the US insisted that their crossing upheld international law, but the PLAN has been increasing its own naval activity near the area lately, including by sailing its Fujian aircraft carrier through the strait, because it's always rules for thee, not the CCP. And did you know that every time you go online, everything you do is potentially compromised? And that's why the people at Surfshark created a VPN that keeps your internet activity private and secure. If you're not taking active steps to protect yourself, everything you do is being tracked and logged by the websites you visit, your internet service provider, and often by your own government. Using a VPN makes you harder to track. Surfshark has servers you can connect to in over 100 countries, more than any other VPN. That includes a server in the British Virgin Islands, where the law allows companies to not log user data. So stay safe and check out Surfshark. With just one Surfshark account, you can connect as many devices as you want. It also comes with a 30-day money-back guarantee. Go to surfshark.com/uncensored and use the code uncensored to get up to 4 months extra. The link is in the description below. Once again, I'm Chris Chappell. See you next time.